Hi there, Nigel Saunders here. Today we're looking at my American elm bonsais. They were dug up from the garden this spring. They had very few roots and all three trees survived. So I've been letting them grow for the entire summer and they've been growing quite well. The pot's getting full of roots, so that's what I wanted to do this summer, was just grow a root system. Today we're going to prune the trees for the first time since they were dug up from the ground and get the structure underway for next season's growing. So here's the trees. I am getting some yellow leaves on them, which concerned me a little bit. The first thing I did was go on the internet and look up Dutch elm disease, and I don't think it's that. Dutch elm disease, the leaves go brown, they wilt. This looks more like leaf blight or something, probably from me overwatering maybe. Yeah, I don't think there's a problem with the tree. A lot of the trees in the area are starting to get some fall colors on them already, so yeah, it's September 1st today. So I think it's just normal. Hope it's normal, and see how the trees do. So when the trees were dug up from the ground, it had a bit of inverse taper, and that's quite normal because we had a long thick taproot that went down into the ground. We didn't have any surface roots that create root flare at the bottom. And since it's been in this training pot, we're developing a lot of roots at the base of the tree, so surface radial roots. And already I can see an increase in thickness at the base of the tree versus up higher. So I think as we work on the roots, keeping them flat and radial, we'll get the bottom of the trunk will thicken up probably quite dramatically over the years. And any problems with inverse taper will slowly go away. So the first thing we're going to do to these trees is we're going to prune back the new foliage to our first set of leaves. I'll talk about the styling of this tree. American elms are graceful trees. They start out from the trunk and the branches fan upwards, sort of like a broom style. So that's the look we're after. For me, a really good bonsai tree, when you see just the bare silhouette of the tree without any leaves, if you can recognize what kind of tree it is just by the styling of it, then that's a really successful tree to me. That's what I like to see, is, the winter silhouette of the tree. You want an elm tree to look like an elm tree. So that's kind of the guidelines we're going to use when we style these trees, is to have those graceful branches going upwards and then starting to droop down a bit. Okay, so let's start the pruning. I'm going to start at the top of the tree, and I'm just going to down to the first set of leaves, and I'm going to prune to an outward facing leaf if possible to keep the branches fanning outwards. Now leaves on an elm are opposite. So you don't get leaves growing up and down. They're usually sideways. So it's harder to change the direction of a branch on an elm tree than it is on some other trees like maples and that, which have one set of leaves growing vertically, the next set horizontal, the next set vertically. So yeah, elm trees are a little harder to style, but you can get there. And again, when I'm pruning the tree down, I'm not pruning it to the final height until I can see the structure better. So I'm just, doing a lighter pruning at first, and then as I see the branch structure, I can start pruning it back further. And the reason I'm pruning it now is I want to get the tree smaller so I can fit it in the basement for overwintering, and I want to give the tree a little time to recover, to seal the wounds and that before it goes in the basement for the winter. And with the leaves on, I can kind of see what the tree's doing a little better than if it was bare. So any dead branches, you can identify them. This will also give some of the branches that are getting shaded out by some of these long upper branches, it'll give it a little more light down to the lower part of the tree. So we'll come back after I've done the first round of pruning, and then we'll start into the structural pruning. Okay, I've finished round one of the pruning, just shortening everything. So now it's time to go in and look at branches that you just don't want. So there's some lower branches back here I can remove, kind of growing at the base of the trees. I've gone in and removed any branches that we just can't use. So some of the lower ones, so we can see our trunk lines. Some of the ones that are too close to the soil level. The next step is to actually go in and look at the branch structure. So we want to remove any place where there's 3 branches coming from one point. We want to reduce that to 2 branches. I want to reduce the height of this smaller tree and get rid of any branches that aren't fanning outwards from the tree. So this one, for example. So let's start by reducing the height of this tree. I'm going to start with this tall trunk here. We'll just reduce it down to this branch. We've got 3 branches coming up from this one point. One's dead, we'll get rid of that one. So we're left with 2 branches coming off here. And I think we're going to dramatically shorten them. So I'll just cut them off. Make this one a little taller. And I think we gotta get rid of this one too. So we're left with a major trunk line, and then I think this one's got to be shortened. So we'll shorten her right off to here, maybe to here. So that gets that trunk cleaned up. There's a little bit of foliage left on it. Now let's look at this back one. We've got our trunk line. We've got a good leader here. We've got this ugly knob coming off the side here. There's been a major cut here before. So I think we've got to get rid of this knob and this branch coming off of here. So let's try and do that. We'll have to get the carving tools out and clean that up. Yeah, not a pretty tree, that one. And we'll reduce this down in height. And back. Clean this one back a bit. Okay, so that tree's simplified and ready to grow again. These 2 trees weren't really intended as bonsai, they just sprouted in the garden. They've had some really hard cutbacks. So they're not great looking trees, but we'll keep developing them and see if we can turn them into a nice looking tree. This is the tree my main tree that I was intending to grow as a bonsai tree. So let's tackle this tree now. So I like everything going on with it. So we're just going to look for any problem areas, like too many branches growing out of one spot, like here. We'll prune off this upward growing one. Get that out of there. I think I'll get rid of this little branch here. There's one at the back we'll get rid of too. I think I'm going to reduce that. This is kind of straight here. I think I'm going to take it off this one and just keep this part of it. Like so. See how that looks. Yeah. And we're a little high over here. Could put this back more. Yeah, I think that'll do. I think that's about all the pruning we can do on it today. So you can see at the base of the tree we do have a little bit of inverse taper. It's a little skinny down lower, but I think, as I say, when the roots start thickening up, we'll get that flare down at the base of the trunk, and all will look good. The last thing we're going to do today is I'm going to rake some of the soil away. When I initially planted these trees, because they had basically almost no roots, I planted them quite deep in the pot, and I want to just reduce the top level of the soil just so we don't get roots growing up higher than we want them to. So that's the last thing I'm going to do, is take off maybe a ½ inch of soil. Okay, here we go. This will make the pot a little lighter too. I can already see a lot of surface roots growing up here. So when I initially planted these trees in spring, I was pretty sure this tree was going to survive. It had the most roots. These two I wasn't sure of. They had very little roots on them. But they did really well. You can see they're just rock solid in the pot. You can't even budge them now. They're just like cemented in there. So this pot is just absolutely full of roots. Okay, I think that'll do. That's got our soil level down a bit. So we'll give the tree a good watering now. So the next steps for these trees will be to get them through the winter, and in spring we'll be doing root pruning, and this tree will probably go in a bonsai pot. There's tons of fine roots in the soil, so it'll be no problem fitting it in a bonsai pot. So a nice flat oval tray would look good underneath it. And then we'll continue to refine the canopy. It's got a lot of character in the trunk, some nice bark. So I think it has a lot of potential. As I said, as we get our flare at the base and surface roots, it'll make the tree look really good eventually. As for Dutch elm disease and any other problems we're going to have with trees, we'll just keep our fingers crossed. There's not much you can do about diseases and that with trees. Dutch elm disease is transported by small beetles that bore into your trunks. So there's not a whole lot you can do about the forces of nature sometimes. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed and try and develop it into a nice bonsai tree. So Nigel Saunders, Kitchener Waterloo Bonsai Society. Have a nice day, and we'll see you next time.